did. Like
Okay. I hope I live up to expectations
well,
here.
it's like I kind of wish that I could have like elongated this like way out like towards maybe like sometime next year, because then I have all your books. You know, most
Well,
of those you've sent me, but I have all your books.
we can do
So
something in the future again if you want, I guess.
like I gotta like break in all my books are in totes, and you like break into all my totes and like where's the okay, I'm gonna have like a list of like a printout of all your names. Like, okay, we need this, and that.
There's a lot. I mean, I've been writing since 1999 is when I sold my first book, which was a romance, a historical romance. And that came out in 2001. So, yeah. And it's so funny because every time you change your name and you go to they everybody thinks your debut.
Yes.
And so what Unbreakable Look comes out and people are like, well, this debut novel, and I'm like, oh sweetie, it's
Yeah.
not a debut,
No,
but
because I watched that and I'm like, wait, she's not a debut author.
no.
She is so far beyond not a debut author.
Yeah. My favorite my
That's
favorite like negative thing that somebody has said about the book was that somebody actually said that the heroine seems really immature. And I was kind of like, oh, well, what were you like at 16?
oh my
Right?
God, no,
Like, because I think this is part of the problem. I think a lot of because so many of us who are adult women read young adult.
right.
And sometimes it's really easy
It's
to
so
write
crazy.
kids with that adult sensibility. And if you're, I'm not the same person, that I was at 16. And so and plus two, Lex was fashioned after a lot of these girls that
Yeah.
I met who had been in the life and were now in the system. And there's a definite like they're so much older in some ways and then stunted in others. It's almost like they're stuck at the age they were when they were taken, for lack of a better term.
Well, hey guys, thank you for coming to watch Author Chat. Today we have the author that I have dubbed the author of many names.
Ooh. So many. That's why I call myself Altercates.
Right? It makes sense. I like seriously, like if I ever get bookshelves back, like we get out of this crap house and I get bookshelves back,
I'll have
I'm
my
just gonna
own.
be like you're just gonna have like your own like two shelves,
I'll be like
and,
Nora.
like, this is all just the same person.
Yep. Yeah, you have to prove it, but I've actually had to prove it by showing people the author photos in the back.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you know the drill. If you're new here, toss your comments in the comment section below. If for some reason YouTube isn't permitting you to do that, you can tag me on any social media and I will find them. One thing I do want to mention is that this book here that we're going to be chatting about tonight is a book about human trafficking. So it does have depictions of rape and drug use and all those
Trigger warning.
So yes, definite trigger warning.
Yeah. I think there's one actually in the front of the book too. There is a disclaimer.
And these are actually the books that you can win tonight. So make sure you ask questions. This is, of course, one of her other names.
Defunct name.
The name that I found her under originally.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Because, of course, she is the amazing author of The Girl in the Steel Corset, which is my all-time favorite. And
I hear that so much from people, and that just warms my heart so much to know people love that book.
The hardbacks are like the little mini, like they're cute, and I love it because they're like the size of like when you watch movies like what is it like Ever After and stuff, and she's got like that copy of Utopia. It doesn't look like this. It's like it's like a little bitty.
It's like
book.
it's like old fashioned size or something. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. Would have been cool if they'd made it actually look kind of like Victorian-y. Like, I mean, obviously it's too expensive now to do books as leather bound and stuff like that. But
it's so cool though. But it's like my daughter's dog that she has, Lark, is named from the character from your book for Lark and Wren.
Oh, so, I love those girls. Yeah, it just didn't pan out. So I know that's part of the thing, right? So that's I'm finally dipping my toe in the indie world just because I've got stuff I want to do or stuff that hasn't worked out traditionally, and I'd at least like to give them an ending or something, right?
Aww. Hey, that works. I know because there's a couple of different series out there. Like the publisher decided not to pick up book 3, so we're just kind of left hanging. And I know one was it Breath of Frost. A Breath of Frost. I think it's A Breath of Frost from
Mm.
Alexander Harvey. And it's like the first 2 books were out, and I'm like, it's an amazing witch series. And I'm like, I need it. Where's the next one? And she ended up having to do it self-published. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I got it. I don't care. I don't care how it comes out as long as I get it.
I've got a book I think that I did. It was supposed to be like a trilogy that I did 10 years ago or more now. It was for Avon, and it was like an urban fantasy thing. And the first 2 books, and then they were just like, nah. And I still get emails from people saying, "Are you ever going to finish that?" And I'm like, I don't even remember what happened in it. And but if I ever get the rights back, then yeah, then maybe I'll rewrite and because I can't write a 3rd book for it without updating the first 2 because the voice won't even be the same. So
right. I understand that.
I think it's probably just me, but I wouldn't want to release a 3rd book without changing the first 2.
Polish it and change it around a little bit.
Oh yeah,
it makes sense because where you wrote 10 years ago is not how you write today. So
no, my voice is a lot. I don't want to say harsher, but maybe more blunt than it was back then, and my sensibilities have changed too. I have no interest anymore in writing characters that are perfect, or that are really great, or that I don't know, like who you'd want to be, kind of thing. So now I just try to make them as authentic as possible, and sometimes people don't like that.
Hey, I love it. So, so I read this book yesterday, and I'm going to say one thing here is like this one, I haven't read this in a long time.
Yeah.
And I still remember a lot of things that happened in that book. That book is great.
It's, and I mean, this is no offense to anybody, but I think that book is part of the reason why I went in this new direction, because it's not quite the way I wanted it to be. And of course that happens when you're writing for, when you've got an editor and you've got, certain things that you're not allowed to do or whatever. So that is definitely one that someday when I get the rights back to that, it's getting rewritten and it's coming out the way I want it to.
I think
it's not a big deal. It's not a really big deal. It's just,
about that, how, the book was dark, but it could have been like way, way darker.
Well, this is just it. I wanted her to set out with intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation about that.
Yeah. Very much like, Fouled is Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read that? By Hannah. Oh my God. Chapin? I can't remember Hannah's last name and I feel terrible.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I might have it.
Yeah. I was just like, yes. Like, give me vengeful girls. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I read this one yesterday. Oh my goodness. I was like so just completely emotionally drained after this.
I feel like I should apologize.
So good, though. No, it was so good though. Cause I mean, I put it all in my review and stuff, that I was sexually abused growing up.
Yeah.
And a lot of things of what Lex was going through, even though I wasn't raped, is still how, I perceived the world and everything. So, and her slowly coming out of her shell, it was perfectly done. I know that I was reading some people's reviews and stuff. They're like, oh, well, Lex doesn't have any emotion and all this stuff. And like, okay, when you are sexually abused, you go one of 2 ways. You either completely shut down where you have no emotion at all, or you are completely overly sexualized. Yeah. And, she went that way, and it makes sense, especially if it's happened to you. that it was, blunt to the point of how it goes.
She lived most of her life in a dissociated state. Which is pretty normal. That is part of the problem too with trying to be authentic. Is that if people aren't expecting it or they don't,
I think a lot of people don't understand it.
Yeah, if they don't understand, and you know what? I'm glad there are people out there that don't understand it.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, sweetie, that means that you've never been through something like this. And not to be patronizing by the term sweetie, but it's just, I'm totally okay with it. If people think that it's completely outlandish or, could never happen, I'm just like, oh, sweetheart, the world needs more of you,
Yeah. It's so crazy. So why have you, I mean, because you went from writing historical romances to going into adult thrillers, which were amazing. I forgot about those.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So much stuff.
I do. I'm going to start, like, if you add any more names, I'm going to seriously need a float chart to figure out, like,
yeah,
okay.
me too. I think the only thing I haven't written is a Western. And that's just because the right idea hasn't come. Maybe, I don't know.
You can just call yourself Cowboy Kate at that. Cowgirl Kate.
Yes.
Cowgirl Kate. There's your new pen.
Yeah. When I was this is a foolish aside, but when I was little, I used to say cowboy girl.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, I don't know why.
That would work. I love that. That would be a really cool title, though.
Cowboy girl. Yeah.
I really like that.
Don't give me any ideas. That's part of the problem. Like with the names and the writing different stuff. Because for me, it's not about the time period I do fall in love with time periods and settings, obviously, but I come up with a character first. So, it'll be more like, I want to write about a character who did this. And then I'm like, well, like, that's an adult thriller, or I want to write about somebody who's been through this. Well, that's probably better as a young adult. Because there have been different things. I've tried writing stuff in different age groups and things like that. And sometimes it just doesn't work out to do books that way. And you have to kind of figure out where they belong. And so I just like to write about different stuff. I mean, right now I still love 19th century stuff. So I have some things going on in 19th century New York that I'm writing about. And then I also have a fantasy that I'm working on that's set in like modern day. And and then I have like an alt history that's set in 19th century New York. So yeah, I've got like, and then I've got some rom suspense that I've, got set up too. So it's just,
I think my brain would implode.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, I like to read everything too. Like a lot of people just have their favorites. Like a lot of people are just like, oh, I only read young adult, or I only read urban fantasy, or I only read this. And I read everything, and I like to watch everything. And as long as the characters are kind of neat, I don't really care what it is. So like I'll watch I used to love that show Justified when it was on. And so I'll watch Justified, and then I'll watch Doom Patrol or because I love Doom Patrol, or I'll watch Westworld and then watch let me see what, I don't know, I'll watch Westworld and then I'll watch something like that Will Ferrell movie, that Song of Fire, or that Story of Fire Saga, the Ding Dong movie.
I've seen bits and pieces of that thing pop up on Facebook. That thing looks
it's adorable. It is actually one of the most fun little movies that I've watched in a long time, because even like the villains are not really there's like no real hardcore horribleness to it or any really horrible people, and it's just fun and foolish. So
so I mean, you're just all over the place with books, and I love it. It makes you so versatile,
Well, it also makes it hard to grow a career, though. It makes it, because you do have the,
kind of everywhere.
I'm just like, oh, hey, I'm going to change my hair color, and I'm going to switch genres. And so, yeah.
It's like, no, stay in one place. No, I'm not. Go away.
Yeah. Pardon me. It does. It makes it hard to kind of stick with something and grow, but then also it's also, I think, what's enabled me to be around this long, because I just adapt to the ever-changing traditional publishing model.
Do you think you'd ever do like a high fantasy, create your own world and like everything under the sun?
Like Game of Thrones kind of high fantasy, like
or like
Dungeons and Dragons,
or what is it, or Throne of Glass, or
I think probably is into that as I'd get was like a Holly Black type thing.
Okay. Ooh, yeah.
I would think because that's kind of right now
I'll be like, watch out for your fairies, man. You look at them on, they're just gonna like you dead.
Yeah, that's kind of the fantasy that I'm working on right now is actually it's fairies. Yeah.
Ooh.
It's fae, but it's I'm talking about it sort of like and I toot my own horn, but it's kind of like I'm calling it like Holly Black meets Neil Gaiman kind of thing because it's
Okay.
when Neil Gaiman did Neverwhere, I loved that book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I'd love to do something like that with New York because if you ever been in New York's underground, it's creepy, right? And you're coming into Grand Central Station on the train, and I'm looking at all this stuff, and I'm like, people could live down here. Like there could be an entire city down here, and you don't even know. And I love the idea of immigrants because New York was such a well, it was the gateway to the country, but
Right.
I love the idea of them bringing their folklore, not even necessarily their gods, but their beliefs with them. So I'm like, well, if the Fae followed the Irish, well, then what followed the Italian people? And what came with the African American people or the Dominican people, or what came with this? So it's a New York that's not that's the world behind the world, and so my fairies aren't necessarily all like of Gaelic kind of thing, like a lot of fairies are. There's going to be this the other world behind New York,
See, I
just as
like
diverse
that
as
because
New
it's
York.
like you always get, when you get stories about fairies and stuff, you always get, the same ones. You always
Well,
you
yeah, and
you always get the same thing.
I'm
God,
trying to be
I
a little
love that.
like right now I'm starting off with girls that are basically the daughters, but they're not really her daughters of the Morrigan, who was the Celtic or the fairy kind
Mhm. Right.
of goddess of death, or for lack of a better term, she would collect the warriors off the battlefield, and
Mhm.
so she's not exactly a go gentle into that good night kind of person.
Right.
And so these are three human babies that died and she took.
Oh, goodness.
And have gave new life and has raised up. So, so
Mm,
I want to explore the whole idea of like what happens when one of them finds her family, you know,
okay. So is this going to be YA or?
because you know how I feel about twins. I'm always about twins, but um, so yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now. I'm just working on building that world up. And
Nice.
so, so there's going to be a lot of stuff about underworld and death and war
Love
and all
it.
this stuff.
Love it.
Um, and fairies that are, because I know a lot of people do fairies that are either like the beautiful but cruel, um, or just really good. And I'm just kind of like, oh, I think they're just kind of like us. And so there's going to be some that are okay and some that aren't.
Ooh. In love. So, what Unbreakable looks like is, it's a very dark themed book, but overall, it's a story of, a lot of hope and, trying, to see if Lex is going to be able to survive without going back to what she was. How did you balance out those dark and light themes?
Because it was just important to me that there be hope. Because in researching the book, and I think we've kind of talked about this, but while I was researching the book, I became a writing mentor to a girl who was trafficked, and then became kind of an aunt kind of figure, I guess, in a lot of ways. She didn't really have anybody in her life that wasn't, court mandated to be there. And we almost adopted her.
Wow.
But well, she ran. She got afraid and ran.
Oh,
And
no.
so the big lesson from that was, these girls are kids. Like it's not always girls that this happens to. It is the majority. But so please just excuse me. I'm going to just use the term girls because that's within the scope of my research. But these girls are, getting rescued doesn't all of a sudden make everything okay. And then so many of them have so many additional problems, and there's like the girl that I got involved with, she was 16 at the time, just barely 16, and already institutionalized and just in and out of places, and mental illness, and then also all the stuff from the trauma. And they don't get there's not a these girls don't get a lot of hope, and
And I mean, they've been practically been brainwashed
yeah,
too. So
yeah,
it's
they are
Stockholm
conditioned.
syndrome.
Yeah, so I needed I needed Lex to be that exception, not the rule. And
Right.
so that's why she had the great aunt and uncle, and why I gave her some good friends, and she got the good guy, because um just good parents isn't going to do it. Just a friend isn't going to do it. So she needed the cop and the therapist and
Yeah.
everybody else, and then she also needed it herself to believe in it, believe in herself. So
Mm.
because it just doesn't normally go that way.
So, like in your research, did you find that for the majority of these people that this happens to, is it usually a family member that has gotten them into it, or is it, like the other girl that was in this, where it was somebody that she had met in school?
Oh yeah, it's not. The family situation contributes to it, and that's probably the best way to put it. Because there is usually some kind of broken or abusive family background. Not always, but in my experience with the girls that I met and interviewed, and particularly the one I mentored, um, she had been adopted, and she had been abused by a family member at a young age. And sometimes that will just make them extra vulnerable. Um, but like you also talked about the hypersexualization,
Mhm.
it also made her very sexualized at a young age and aware of her, I don't want to say power, because I'm not sure she saw it that way, but her allure. And
Mhm.
she actually put her own ad up on Backpage.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then like would make these dates and wouldn't show up half the time because she just thought it was funny. I mean, at that point she was 13.
Mhm.
Um, and then one night she did show up, and the guy who was there was a pimp.
Oh god.
And a lot of times what happens is they'll become very, well, like Mitch in the book. They will be very friendly. They'll be very sweet. They'll be the perfect boyfriend, is what they'll be, and there will be gifts and all that kind of stuff involved. And then you owe them a favor,
Right.
and it just goes from there. And usually there's a lot of drugs.
Yeah, I know that, like, she constantly talks about, that she wished she had more drugs so
Yeah,
she could just be completely numb.
yeah.
Like, she's picking-
Um, that I knew of, it seemed to be a lot of ecstasy
Mhm.
and crack
Oh wow.
was the two big ones. Um, but yeah, so it's not, you know, not a happy place.
Mm.
And then they get out of it, but a lot of them go on to become sex workers, and I have no problem with sex work. Um, but if you're doing it because you think that's all you're good for,
Yeah.
um, not because you actually enjoy it or want to do it, then there's an issue, right?
Mhm.
Then there's a problem. Um, so yeah, it's just
It's like, it's so sad. It's just
it
it's
really is. It
so
really is. Yeah,
devastating.
yeah. And I mean, for uh, every Lex or every success story, because if you watch Very Young Girls, that documentary, or if you watch I Am Jane Doe,
Mm.
there are success stories. There are people that get taken out of the life and manage to be okay at some point. But there are 100 or more that
Right.
um, you know don't get that, or don't even live to see it. They're unfortunately expendable.
Yeah. And it's like, and by the time that they are rescued and stuff, I mean, I mean, look at Lex. I mean, even though she comes out okay, I mean, she had, crabs and all this other stuff. I mean, these girls are just completely brutalized.
Yeah, and it just doesn't. Yeah, it's gross. It really is. Like, and every time I had something happen to her, or I did one of those flashbacks, and I was just like, this is just too much. And then I'd hear a story about, and it was just like nothing I did in that book was over the top or anything that was outside of realism. And so it was read by a couple of people who were trafficked as well. And
so how did you cope dealing with all the research?
I cried a lot.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I cried a lot. I got angry a lot. And I put a lot of my energy, into this girl that I didn't think I could save her, but I really wanted to help her. But you can't help somebody that doesn't
want help.
That's not ready.
Right.
I'm not going to say she doesn't want help. I'm just going to say she's not ready for everything that comes with that. And she's 19 now, and she's still out there. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I did love how, that you had Lex, constantly talking about, the internal monologue about how she felt that she wasn't worth saving, and how, her aunt they're going to change their mind because she's not worth it. And then, the people that are in her life now telling her that she was, I think that really helped her, deal with everything that happened to her, to really show her, like, no matter what happens, these people are here for you. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot harder to do in real life.
Well, it is, because you're going against, like somebody like Lex. I mean, like her mother was horrible, but she was at least something of a mother. And if you've got somebody that at least has known some kind of love, then that can give you something to work with. But when you're dealing with somebody who's never really felt like anybody wanted them, and you're fighting the lifelong conditioning that they had, and the whatever abuse, and then whatever mental illness they've got on top of that. So you've got a girl out there who is who, we'll just throw some stuff around. She's borderline personality disorder, probably bipolar, has dissociative episodes, PTSD, and no treatment or meds for any of that. So she's doing whatever drugs they give her, a mix of pot and crack, and then and then she already knows how to get what she wants. So
I don't know how these girls would ever trust anybody ever again after being taken out of that.
They don't, or they trust the wrong person.
Yeah.
And they will continue to push at they want you to keep, I'm sorry, I keep generalizing, but in my experience, there is I'm going to keep making you prove that I'm worthy, or I'm going to keep making you prove that you love me. I don't believe it, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I still get, not too long ago, there was a 3:30 a.m. phone call, and just, tearful drunkenness on the other end, just because I picked up.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah, the exact words were, "I knew you'd pick up." And I'm just like, oh God, but and I do, I pick up. Right? Because I still keep hoping that someday I'm going to pick up and she's going to be ready for help. That's
about all you can do.
Yeah. But I don't know how. I'll tell you, the unsung heroes of this are, because the people I met while researching this book, it's not just the girls, it's the police officers that are trying to help them. Like, I met this wonderful state detective Tanya Campanoni. She's mentioned, she's mentioned in the acknowledgments of the book. And she was actually who introduced me to my mentee. But she was on the human trafficking task force, and she saved, for lack of better terms, so many of these girls, and boys, kids, women. And then there's the social workers. Another person that's mentioned is like is Dina St. George, who is a social worker in Connecticut and deals with this every day and with a number of people. And I'm just, and the juvenile parole officers and correctional officers and the people that work at the facilities and, that are actually trying to help are, because it's got to be so frustrating. It's got to be like beating your head against a brick wall. And, and they just do it because every once in a while they win, right?
Right.
And that's worth it. And
I just one little spot of hope of the one person that you get out and they survive and they flourish, and
and
that one person makes it all worthwhile.
And you hope they don't come back. And so yeah, and then there's the ones they see a lot, and then they become friendly with. And but it's I'd like to do actually some more stuff at some point about some of these issues, because I got to see the inside of a lot of facilities. So I'm kind of like, because a lot of times the juvenile justice system comes along with this too, because the girls will get in trouble. Because a lot of times how they find them or how they've been trapped is because they get arrested for something else,
right?
Stealing or whatever. And so mine actually tried to, I don't know, they said she tried to start a fire, but anyway, to hear her tell it, it's actually a hilarious story. I won't go into it. But yeah, so then she ended up in the system as well. And then she turned 18, and for a while she ended up in the women's prison here in Connecticut. And yeah.
It's so
the real fun day was when it was a day when a pimp called my house, though. That was
man, like Lord, I wanted to pop into the book when Mike took her into the bathroom with his phones and stuff, and I was like, we had a somewhat not exactly similar situation, but with my oldest daughter, that her at the time boyfriend tried something, and we didn't find out about it until a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, he is lucky that we didn't know about it when we were home, because I have a couple bats and I've got knives and a bow and arrow and I've got stuff. He probably wouldn't have made it out of the house without.
It happens, I've heard stories about, and sometimes too, I mean, it's just like, it's just this taking advantage thing. And like it's almost like teenage boys can be like a pack of wolves, and they don't even really quite, I don't think, even realize what they're doing wrong, which is frightening and makes me wonder about their parents. But I've heard horror stories, about, well, there was that girl, in our grade that, was known for doing this. So, some of the guys would take her into the woods, and I'm like, what? And
I do like when she was talking to her therapist, you add into the thing, like her therapist asked her, like, do you think if you would have said no, that it would have made a difference? And it's like, that I think is a 100% testimonial to that these teens need to know about, that just because you were forced to do something, just because, later on in the book, she talks about how she had orgasmed when she was being raped. Just because those things happen does not mean that it was okay. It
exactly.
does not mean that you wanted it. It does not mean that you said yes because you didn't say no.
And it adds to a lot of the guilt.
Yeah.
Too. And no, it's that's all biology, that doesn't mean anything. But yeah, there's and there's I find too, there's a lot of that well, he didn't hurt me. So it couldn't have been assault, because it's not like he hit me or anything. And it's like, well, no, that doesn't matter.
That's the way it works. No.
Either. basically at the end of it, like if you feel really bad about it afterwards, that's a good indication right there that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
So, it's Mike and his friends, they were
I
pretty
wanted to grab
crap.
my baseball bat and just like, no.
Yeah, they were pretty gross, and unfortunately, there's a lot of that, and I don't know what's going on, but somebody needs to stop the way we're raising boys.
Oh my God, I
change that.
know. The high school over here a couple years ago, they were going to change into uniforms because one of the girls that we knew came home, that she was sent home because she had a tank top on and she didn't have a bra underneath it, so you couldn't see her bra strap or anything, but it was distracting. And it's like, okay, then what about all the guys that are running around for track and stuff without their shirts on? Well, that's distracting to me. It's like, you can't have it one way. It's just, oy.
That double standard. Yeah, I know, it's maddening.
It's so crazy. It's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't you be more concerned about what these kids are learning and stuff? Get the butts in the seats, get them learning. This is not something we need to be worrying about. Oh my God, I can see a bra strap. The horror.
Yeah, like we're not Victorians. The sight of ankles shouldn't send somebody into a fit, right?
Oh,
like
no.
It shouldn't.
Right? No.
Shouldn't be uncontrollable just because.
No.
My God, a bra strap.
Yeah. Oh no, a bra strap. Oh goodness, you're gonna die.
Right? Like I don't understand that.
I love your other books, and I love your adult thrillers and stuff. But like all the last two books you've done, these darker books are just so powerful and so amazing. Are we going to see any more of these darker stories?
Yes. Next up, we've done a little shuffling around. Eventually, I've got a book coming out about dissociative identity disorder.
Okay.
But next up, the follow up to this book from Wednesday, probably unfortunately won't be out until 2022 just because of scheduling and stuff. But
this is getting a book too?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. I was like, oh
no. Is
like updates.
is about a young woman who she's like about 18, 19 kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's always just been her and her mother her entire life. And then the FBI shows up at her house and she finds out that her father is a notorious serial killer.
Oh God.
Yeah, who's been in prison for most of her life. And
whoa.
It's a lot of fun because like she's a kid that has like seen this, because this came from, I watched that Ted Bundy movie. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, but the one with Zac Efron, right? And there's this whole, I don't know if you watched it, but there's this scene where the woman who Ted married in prison is sitting in the courtroom and you can tell she's pregnant. And I just thought to myself, going, God, can you imagine growing up knowing you were Ted Bundy's kid? Right? And then I just went, the light bulb. Like,
oh, there's story.
There's a story. And it was so funny because the stuff that inspired me, like it wasn't Ted Bundy. It wasn't even the one that was his girlfriend in this, although I have watched the documentary about her and I find her fascinating. But I was just like, it was just that 5 seconds of screen time that this baby bump got. And so then basically her father is dying, and he hasn't given up the rest of the locations of or names of the victims, and he'll only do it to her, give them to her.
Oh wow.
So even though it's like it could be very sensational, the lot of it is about her and her dad. and not just that, but it's her and her mom.
Right.
How could you have fallen for this guy? How could you have it's
that other side of the coin, like when you see like school shootings and all this other stuff, and then I always think about like the parents and the family members of these people, because it's like you think, oh well, how didn't you know? And it's like, you don't know.
No,
you don't know.
There's one of the you're probably too young to remember Columbine. But
Oh no, I was alive. I'm not that
okay.
one. I'm almost 40.
Oh, okay. So I watched a TED Talk, and it was one of the Columbine shooters' mothers.
Oh.
And it is kind of heartbreaking, like, because this woman was vilified, and
Right.
here she is, but she's trying to reconcile with what her baby did.
Yeah.
And yeah, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. So it's something to look up sometime, because I think it's on YouTube. But yeah, look it up sometime, because I think it's called like My Son Was One of the Columbine Shooters or something. And yeah, it's powerful. And and because we do, when things like this happen, we do wonder, like, well, how was this kid raised? And and there she is. Oh, I raised him.
I do not remember who wrote the book, but there is a book, and it deals with a school shooting where this girl's brother, who was like 4.0, he was never bullied or anything like that, shoots up the school with other people that he knew. I don't remember all of it, but it's like the aftermath of what she dealt with after the fact, because he actually, I think he got gunned down by the police department.
Is that the Cody Keplinger one? This is what happened, or that's not what happened?
I read them back to back, because I read that one and then I read another one by Kelly Armstrong, and they were both about school shootings. Let me see.
And then there was I think This Is How It Ends.
Yeah. And I mean, that book was just, it's an eye opener about, what you think that, like what these people go through after, their whole entire world has shattered.
It's interesting to me because I was raised in Canada.
Time Bomb. It's Time Bomb. Oh, Time Bomb by Jolie. I could not pronounce her last name. She's the same author that did the Testing series. Okay. And then Aftermath by Kelly Armstrong. I don't remember which one it is, but it's one of those.
I went to school in Canada, and I can't imagine what it's like you having children. Like, what, like, do you worry about this every day? When you said you're like when the thing, I remember in the middle, when COVID first started, that March 2020 was the first March there hadn't been a school shooting.
Right? Oh my God.
In years, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, that it's like, that was like one of the first things that had popped into my head when the girl, because both of my girls, I have a 16-year-old and one that's getting ready to turn 10. That 16, your sister's 16. Doing this in the living room is a bad idea. And I was like, you know what? With everybody, a lot of states, they're only doing virtual. Like, there's gonna be like virtually no school shootings or anything this year at all. And it's like, that's
and there shouldn't ever be any. I'm not gonna go into soapbox, but I mean, like, right? Like, that's just not something kids should have to worry about.
Yeah, and it's so strange, that a year ago it was, oh, hey, I bought my kid a bulletproof backpack, and now it's like, oh, my kid's just staying home. We don't have to worry about that this year. I mean, it's completely mind blowing.
Yeah, I have such a hard time wrapping my head around it, because it was just nothing we ever had to, and still don't.
We never dealt with that. I mean, I went to high school in Ohio. I mean, the school closed when hunting season started. We had teenagers with their pickups, with their rifles behind their heads, loaded. And the one kid, like, it was like pointing towards him. It was like, you might want to like
turn that around. Yeah.
Or take the ammunition out of it, because that's not smart.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's crazy. And that was like, God, that was back around 9/11 when that happened. I mean, these kids came to school knowing how to take apart their guns and put them back together and stuff, because it's awesome. Yeah, and now it's just like, oh, a kid brought an unloaded gun to school. Oh, a kid brought a knife to school. And I'm just like, and now you have like virtual things where this one 4th grader got expelled because his
toy gun.
Yeah. No, this was a BB gun. And I'm like, okay, why was the BB gun on the floor for his sibling to trip over in the first place? That should have been put away, you know. And I mean, B, he's not even in school. It's just kind of stupid. But I would be more
Well,
offended it was
they put
there to
us in
begin with.
charge. We could just solve all the world's problems.
So crazy. We just need to go back to like swords and swords
Right?
or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness.
Like, that's just it, because, you know, if you've ever lived outside of the US, that's most other countries don't solve a lot of issues that way. Again, that's the most diplomatic way I can put that.
Crazy.
It is, as somebody who I've spent most of my life, I grew up elsewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's been one of the things to try and get used to.
It's so insane. It's unreal. It's just completely unreal. So for these children and teens, I mean, you've had firsthand experience of dealing with these kids that have been human trafficked and stuff. What is a way that we could help them?
Well, there's a lot of great organizations out there that are trying to help, and giving help. And actually, I think that's probably the best way to do it. Like here in Connecticut, we have Love 146.
Mm-hmm.
And New York, there's GEMS, there's what's it called, Safer Haven or Safe Horizons, that I just heard about. Yeah, look and see what kind of nonprofits are in your area that are helping, especially into if they're like group homes. Donate to them, if they're trying to raise some funding and things like that. Because really, what you want to do is you want to keep the girls out of the system, or keep the
Right.
kids out
Yeah.
of the system. If they can get any kind of private care,
Mm-hmm.
that's the better way to do it. Like that was something I brought up in the book too, and somebody had asked me about that. Like, why did Lex got to go to this fancy place, and Daisy didn't?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, again, that's like the family involvement, man. That's like,
Yeah.
and the difference between somebody wanting to get this kid some help, and the kid not having somebody to fall back on.
Yeah.
And
A lot of
so
state-run
definitely,
facilities are.
if you've got things in your area that are helping raise awareness,
Mhm.
um, or that are helping these kids, the best thing you do is just throw your money at them.
Yeah, I posted that I'm addicted to Bookbow. I think
Mhm.
they could do like an amazing design from this book, like maybe with like ivy and poppies and stuff,
Mhm. The
and
10
maybe do a collab with them to donate money to one of these places, because I mean, tons and tons of people love that company, and they make these amazing book sleeves,
Yeah,
and I think they could really get the word out.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to it. I've done a few things already, to kinda do some stuff, and, have been in talks. It's hard though. Like, I've been in talks with some local places here too to try and do some fundraising. I'm like, "Hey, like, let's do," well, of course, COVID kinda ruined
Right.
everything, so
Yeah.
I was like, "Let's do," like, I was gonna launch
Mhm.
with a group here, and, was gonna order in a bunch of the books, and then, like, just, you know, get them for whatever price, the wholesale price, and then just turn around and sell them for the cover price, sign them, and then I'm like, "Okay, here you go. All the profit is yours."
I was like, too bad Wednesday Books didn't do like, I mean, even if it's just like $1 or something, like $1 for every book that sold would be automatically donated to, whatever foundation.
I don't know the
Yeah,
logistics
I
of
don't know. There's so much stuff that deals with that, because I know some book did that. That was God, that was over 10 years ago, I know, because that was back before I was even a book reviewer, that some book
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah, I don't think that's
Oh,
easy to
right?
necessarily do, um, or to
Nothing easy. It can't just be, "Oh, hey,
account for.
here,
Well,
take my
it's
money."
easier if the author is just like, "Well, I'm gonna donate a portion of my
Right,
royalties," but then you only get your royalties,
if the book
twice a year.
sells.
Um,
Yeah.
so, Yeah, so I just thought the easiest way to do it would be just to get these books, and then whatever we sell, they just get the
Right.
profits.
Yeah.
But that, of course, didn't happen. So, yeah. Do you know, and the thing is, it's maddening is, I've been getting a lot of, "Oh, I didn't know this was such a problem here." And actually trying to get people to just even,
It's
pay attention
hard
to me.
because it's
Pay
like
attention to me. But,
it's not a topic that people want to talk about. Like I'll be at
it's
work
not.
and I mean, we'll just talk about things and I'm like, oh hey, well if you talk about this to your children and stuff, it won't be such a hush hush thing. I mean, me and my girls, everybody in this house, we constantly were talking about, sex and consent and all this stuff. And it's like, if you are open with talking to this stuff with your kids, if something happens, they are more geared toward to coming to tell you that it happened.
This may be an unpopular opinion, but I'll tell you why it's not getting the attention it deserves. Because it's 20% or less of girls who are or individuals who are trafficked are white. Over 40% of trafficking victims are Black,
And that shouldn't matter.
or mixed. And so generally, and from a lot of times lower income situations, right? And so here's basically the thing: it's not rich white kids being affected by this,
Right.
and not rich white boys being affected by this. So, yeah, like my mentee is biracial, and a lot of the girls that I met that were in with her in some of the facilities she was in, and there was one that was white, and most of them were girls of color. And I'll tell you what, I was at the juvenile detention center, and one of the guards told me, he's like, "Yeah, the boys get visitors, but no, people just forget about the girls." And that's another reason this issue just doesn't get, because it just doesn't apply to the haves.
It just amazes me that things like this are still happening, like I'm one of those people, like, I don't care, gay, straight, bi, trans, Black, white, purple, I don't care.
Yeah.
I will love you for you. I will go to bat for you. I don't care what your nationality is or your religion or any of that stuff. It shouldn't matter.
It should.
You were brutalized. You were harmed. This shouldn't have happened. End of story. How can I help you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is so mad.
I know. Oh, I know. It's maddening. This world is a mess. So, we got to fix it.
Pretty much. It's like I saw a thing a couple weeks ago that said that the children of our year, like kids like my youngest and stuff, that when they become adults, that they're going to be one of the most accepting generations ever. Good. And it's like, let's hope so. I just see a little creepy eye poking in there.
Yeah, right? That's all right. I'm okay.
I'm okay.
I like the crazy.
Go. Oh God. Go.
But yeah, like so I have a niece that's a great niece, actually, that's 10. And one day we were sitting there talking when I was home in Canada, and my sister's in her 60s, so her grandmother, and she was like saying something to my niece about when she meets a boy and gets married, right? And my sister walks away, and then I lean up to my niece and I said, it's okay if it's not a boy, right? That you marry. And she was just like, yeah. It was just so, like,
cute.
Yeah, it's okay.
Like, duh.
Yeah, I know, but
it's like when I see things, I saw, I was just scrolling through Facebook and I saw this thing that this lady was hiding in her room with a bottle of wine, that she had just talked to her daughter about sex and her period and everything. And her daughter was like 11 and she had been informed, like, Mom, I started that like almost 2 years ago. You're too late. And she's just like, that she is just horrified And it's like, I think if we demystify a lot of this, like the human trafficking and rape and all this stuff, and we, bring both sides of the people to the conversation and everything else, that it takes away its power.
Yeah. And it's just all like people get, their fear is that their kid's going to get snatched off the street. I'm like, that's not really how this works.
Right.
Because a lot of times these people
lured
and try to
into
trust.
it.
It's a long game, right? It's a long con. So I'm like, what you need to be worried about is anybody that's kind of just showing up and trying to insinuate themselves in your kid's life, or buying your kids gifts, or being really nice, especially if it's an older guy.
Yeah.
And whether or not you know him doesn't matter. But here's the thing: a lot of the gangs and pimps are recruiting guys from high school to be pimps, or be recruited to recruit for them, because if they get arrested, they're not going to do the same time.
Right.
They're underage.
They're under the age of 18.
So then that's when it gets great. It's like, what? Okay, so some guy at my daughter's school all of a sudden is like paying attention to her. And then, but it's not, it's not kids that are confident necessarily. And I don't mean like give the impression of confidence. I mean, it's kids who know what they're worth, or know that they're loved, don't fall for it as easily. I know this sounds horrible, but
that's understandable, because why are they going to go after somebody that knows that there's people there for them? They're going to go after the kids that are insecure.
That's just it. Like, if you're a good kind of like, seriously, let's just think about it. Like, if you were a pimp and you came along and you saw this girl, and like she had really good parents who would probably look for her,
right?
Are you going to take
somebody that you want? You want to go after somebody that nobody cares about,
whose parents aren't there, and as a and they don't really have the means to look,
right?
And that's some of it too, like, or, and also too, a kid that belongs to a group that maybe some law enforcement agencies or whatever aren't necessarily keen to look for, so when I was a kid, I had this friend who was a little bit older than me, and she was very pretty, and she always seemed to be overly confident. But I remember looking back at some of the stuff that happened when we were kids, and my home life wasn't perfect, but I had an awesome mom, and I just remember like us being somewhere one time, and she was with this much older guy, and she had a thing for these much older guys. And I was realizing how he was kind of manipulating her, and it was just interesting because his friend came along and kind of hit on me, and I was like, I'm 16, you're 27. What do you think's going to happen?
It's like, no.
Right? Like, I'm just like, this kind of skeeves me out and whatever. But she was, able to look back on that, and I'm just like, oh my God, she would have been, because I wondered if, oh my God, would I have fallen for this? And maybe, I don't know, but she would have. And she was somebody that gave that impression, and that she wouldn't have. But yeah, she was definitely somebody that was looking for male love.
Acceptance.
That's a lot of that, right?
Right. Yeah, I think like just reading this book,
just saying it's that, because it's not. But
and like reading this and seeing like other documentaries and stuff, that I think a lot of it is like, they're looking for love, they're looking for that acceptance, and
and I think you raise your kid to know their worth. Like, to know that, even because kids are going to go through that crap anyway. But even if you just raise them to be like, I think you're awesome, that kind of thing, it's going to at least make them a little more suspicious, whatever. You can just only do what you can do.
I mean, I know it's bad to say, but I think, growing up and being molested by 3 different people growing up, I think, that just kind of put me into a different mindset of where I'm more open and talking to my girls about stuff like this, and explain to them, like, which I wish everybody would explain to their kids, like, if somebody tries to touch you in a perfect manner or tries to get you to do something, it is okay to tell them to F off, to run, to scream, to gouge their eyes out. And I don't care if it's an adult, I don't care who it is, you fight for all it's worth, and you will not get into trouble, because
and I think that is the main thing, because that's how a lot of these perpetrators work too, is they rope them in, and then, they work on the shame factor too, right? So these kids feel like they can't go home.
I know that I guess that's what happened to me, that the one gentleman that molested me, that he told me, of course, that he was going to kill my family, but he said I couldn't tell them. He never said I couldn't tell her friend. So I told her friend, and that's how he got caught. And it's like apparently I wasn't a stupid child. There are loopholes.
Yeah. Well, that's why, that's why they do that whole thing too. Like tell somebody, like tell a teacher or whatever, right? Because it's not your family.
Yeah.
And so it's, anyway, it's just
it's like, never be afraid if something happens, guys that are watching this, never be afraid to tell somebody. They might tell you they're gonna come and murder your family and stuff. More than likely, that
they're not really gonna do that. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna
We're too lazy for that.
Because something I have learned, unfortunately, is that they're not gonna go through that much trouble. Because these girls are highly replaceable.
Yeah.
So, and I've learned that from the one I've worked with, is like, no, like when that pimp called my house, I freaked out. And then I realized, like, nobody's coming after me. I'm a middle-aged white woman, first of all. And but it's like, and that sounded very pompous, but you know what I mean? Climate. And not just that, like, she's not worth it.
Right.
Right? Like right now you got maybe, solicitation or pimping charges on you, but you're not going to risk
scare factor.
You're not going to do violence to somebody.
Right, because they control these girls and the boys and stuff through fear. But as long as they're afraid to do anything, that's how they keep them.
Yeah, but no, like they're not, nobody's coming after me, and he never called here again. Still doesn't mean I want them knowing where I live.
Right.
But,
yeah, that's scary.
Well, yeah, if I think about it too long, yeah. But I don't. Yeah. So there, just between you and me, there have been times when I wish one would show up.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. Right.
Oh.
Like, yes, I have a very large knife behind my back, buddy. Show up. Yeah. So anyway, on that murderous thought.
So we have some writing questions.
Okay.
For aspiring authors that want to write stories with these darker themes, what is some tips or recommendations that you can give them?
Oh, well, be prepared. You have to be prepared to go there. If you're a very positive person, it's going to be very difficult for you to go to these dark places. But you can't pull your punches, like you have to, bad stuff happens. And so, but I would read about trauma. I mean, that's the big thing. I would read about the effect that these situations have on people. The best research you can do is like, the psych side of things, I think, in a lot of ways. And then also watch some documentaries on the topic that you want to do, and read some newspaper articles. And if you can, talk to people who actually work in the field. Because that's how this came about. I had asked a friend of mine, I need to do research on human trafficking. And that's when she said, I have a friend who's a state detective who worked on the trafficking task force. And so that's how I met Tanya. And then it just went from there. And then I met my mentee, and then I met her social worker, and then I met her probation officer. And then, and then I was talking to lawyers and judges and, so once you get one connection in there, it's a lot easier to get more.
Right. Let's see. So it seems like all of your books have empowering girls and empowering women and all this. How do you go about creating characters? And I mean, I love all your books because like they are like that, that all of these, I mean, even this one with Lex, I mean, although she doesn't start out, being very strong to begin with because of everything that's happened to her. I mean, through the course of the book, she's, starts, she told Mike off, I mean, which I think he kind of peed his pants a little bit, and it's like, and I really just love how her, like, although she told him off, she went outside and she puked her guts up, and that is, I mean, that is like spot on exactly the kind of mental state. I know that when I went to court through my first marriage, because I was a product of domestic violence. And I mean, his mother just walked past me and just kind of grinned at me, and I ran off to the bathroom. And it takes its toll. And you can be strong in one moment and go puke your guts out the next second.
Yeah, you don't have to be strong all the time.
No,
nobody is. But I think part of it is okay, I'm going to try and do this very quickly. There's a big age gap between me and my older sisters. And I was born, my mother was 35 when she had me, but she was in her 20s when she had my older siblings. So there's 14, 12, and 9 years difference between me and the next one. And this is why I have a niece that just turned 40, right? So, and this is why I have great nieces now, because I'm not that much older than my nieces and nephew. So, my father was a drunk, and not like all the time. He was just a binger and a bit of a womanizer. And I'm not going to like demonize him, but I'm not going to oversell him either. And by the time I came around, or by the time I was born, she had kind of gotten tired of it. And I think and she was just older. And so, she kind of raised me with this, like, don't take us crap kind of thing, right? And probably a little more so than she probably ought to have, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really respect the man. But anyway, she would tell me stories about when she was young, and I think she was always just kind of a scrapper. And like, she clotheslined a guy off a bicycle one time because he was picking on this kid. I love the story. And she had a bloodthirstiness to her. She was this lovely little woman that actually had debilitating arthritis. She was crippled for my entire life. And so, but she was just absolutely bloodthirsty, and she passed that on, I guess. And so she made me read things like one of her favorite books was How Green Was My Valley, which is an old classic. But she didn't just love it because it was about Scotland and all this stuff. Her favorite scene was one where they captured a rapist and they turned him over to the girl's father and brother. Whoa. And that was her favorite scene in this book. So
that is dark.
Right?
That
was my mom. And it was funny because she really was this really, really sweet little woman. But she had this, like, I think in another life she was probably a vigilante.
I could see that one, happening in that one,
Exactly, right? So, and when I was young, I didn't have a lot of confidence, and there's so many things I wish I could have done differently. But I'm getting older now, and there is that thing about, as you approach middle age, or once you get middle age, that whole, like, I am woman, hear me roar kind of thing, right? Like, you do all of a sudden start to see the world a little differently. And, you have that kind of anger when you're in your 20s, that kind of indignant, rebellious anger kind of thing, right? And and I see a lot of it now, and then it kind of goes away, and then in your 30s, and but there is this thing, like, people just don't talk about feminine rage enough. And that's kind of what interests me. Is it's not even so much that I don't think I particularly write empowered women. I write angry women. Like, I write women that are just kind of like they get to that tipping point, and they're just not going to take it anymore, and they've just decided that the consequences are worth it, and off they go. And I think that's kind of a powerful thing. And I think it's something that men have had for a long time, because they have that physical kind of strength.
Right.
But no, you just, we're told for so long, like women are blamed for so much, and we're told we're devious and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, all right, then use that. That's my superpower. And so if I can't, fist fight my way out of this, I'm going to think my way out of this.
Yeah, I like that explanation, because like even from The Girl in the Steel Corset, you have that little novella that's set before that, and and she gets accosted,
Yeah.
and she fights him off, and
Yeah,
goes.
the first chapter of
Yeah.
that she fights him off, and
Yeah.
of course that was a lovely thing, being able to do that, give a girl that physicality.
Yeah,
And there
especially
are
in that
women
time
out there
period.
that have it. I mean, I would not want to try anything with Gina Carano, right? But yeah, I think I like to write about women who actually know their worth and their limitations.
I like that. I like that better than just being empowered. That it's more that they're just tired of people's crap. I think like what you said, like it goes from this like rebellious energy to now it's just kind of like you see your eyes are open more being older. Like I'm in my late 30s, and it's just you just start seeing a lot of the injustices that are in the world, and it's like, but it just kind of sucks I don't have the power to kind of change it. But
yeah, it's yeah, and then you do just start to realize, what you're made of, what you'd do in a situation.
You get to a point where you get to your tipping point where you just don't care what other people think anymore, and it's like we're gonna fix this. I don't care if you like it or not. This is gonna be. You don't like it, there's the door.
Yeah, I think we've reached a point too in the world where there are some people that are so incredibly sensitive, and then there are some people who aren't sensitive enough, or aren't at all. And so it's just kind of so yeah, I think I just want to write, like I watched John Wick, and I was like, I want to write a woman doing this. Because I can totally see a woman pushed to the edge doing this, and that's where Seven Crows came from. And so, or Audrey, actually, the books I wrote is Kate Kessler, the Audrey Hart series. It Takes One is about a woman who killed her best friend's abusive father when she was 12. And that actually came from a true story. Kind of. Somebody accused me of ripping off the Anne Perry story, because when she was, the author Anne Perry, when she was young, she was involved in a situation like that, and they killed a friend's mother. Was it Fierce? No, what is it? Something Creatures, Heavenly Creatures. The movie Peter Jackson did with Kate Winslet, one of her first movies, is based on it. And I was like, no, actually, it came about because when I was 12, one of my best friends was molested by her father. And when she told me about it, we sat down and we cried, and then we plotted to kill him. but of course we never did. Because 13-year-old Kate had not, or 12-year-old Kate had not quite realized what circumstances were worth it. But no, so we talked about, I mean, he went to jail. It all turned out all right. And she turned out all right, which is more important. But
I've seen her books at the store because she writes mysteries.
That's where it came from.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it was just like, well, what if we had?
Ooh.
And then came Audrey. So
that's insane.
Yeah, so I guess
man. Whew, it's like mind blown. That is That's crazy. Okay, so last but not least, what is the message that you want to people to take away from reading What Unbreakable Looks Like?
Hope. I think, that was ultimately the theme. I wanted there to be you have to have that hope. Lex certainly had it. And also that that you don't have to be broken by stuff that happens to you. It's okay. Be dented, be bashed up, be as, screwed up as you want to be, but um you're only, I think, as broken as you let yourself be. Like I think that's something that we've kind of forgotten in this age where it's like, look, there are meds out there are therapies out there's everything. You don't have to hide it in shame. You don't have to take you don't have to wear that responsibility. You don't have to wear the guilt. You can, something horrible can happen to you, and you don't have to deal with like that forever, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you
Oh,
can
trust me, I know what
you're
you
allowed to
mean.
turn it into something that strengthens you.
Why
And
people kind of like ask me like, oh, why do you share this? And I'm like, shouldn't this be like hush hush? And I'm like, okay, it's not a secret. I've been molested growing up. I was dealt with domestic violence with my first marriage. I attempted suicide back in 2009. Talking about it, and it just goes back to it being demystified. When you keep stuff internalized and you keep it all hush hush, it makes it feel like you did something wrong when you didn't. You
that's
did
just it.
nothing wrong.
Yeah, and you don't need to be,
Mm-mm.
victimized any further.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing, is that you don't have to. You did nothing wrong. I think that's part of the thing too. That um, with Lex in particular, with those books, is that this was done to her. You
Yeah.
know, um, by somebody who had a lot more life experience and set out to do it, like knew exactly what he was doing. So, um, yeah, I think, hope and just knowing your worth. If I could do that, if I could had some magic machine, that's what I would do. I would just show every teenage girl what she's really worth. Um, and then see what the impact is.
Right. This is definitely one of those books that I think it should be in all the schools. It should be required reading. This is like, I would rather my kids read this versus Lord of the Flies.
Oh
Uh,
god. And let's face it, it's a bunch of boys.
oh,
Like,
right.
you want to see vicious. You want to see what something that really go nuts. You put a bunch of
Oh.
girls on an island and see what I think Libba Bray did that with Beauty Queens or something, right? I need to read that. But yeah.
So let's talk about something maybe a little bit lighter here. What have you been reading lately?
Okay. I have finally discovered Jennifer Armentrout.
Oh, you late
So
to the party.
I am. I'm so late. And this is the thing. Like, I did a signing with her like years ago. Like, I knew her from Harlequin. I knew her. I just haven't read her. And I am reading From Blood and Ash.
Okay. I
Which
haven't read that
is
one yet.
it's good. And I like the fact that
On my
it's
wish list.
it's a little more. I think it's kind of like new adultish. Like, I know that
Mhm.
seems to be like a bad phrase, because and I
Right.
I blame a lot of the people, just it just seemed to be an excuse to write books about a bunch of college kids just having like explicit sex.
Some of it
Um
was really, really bad.
yeah.
They're just
Which is too bad, because I think we really do need something that bridges young adult and
I
adult.
do, because I mean, like, that's when we split books up in the store. I'm like, okay, well, if they're in middle school, that goes to like juvenile
Yeah.
fiction. If they're in high school, it goes to young
Yeah, but what
adult.
happens when they're in college? Because it's
Yeah,
not.
it's like, oh, where do we put this? And then it's like, okay, skim through the book. Okay, there's nothing there. We're just going to toss this in with the YA.
Yeah, right? And I think that's kind of, it's such a disservice,
It
you know
really is.
because like a 17 or 18-year-old may not wanna read young adult, but they may not be quite ready for,
And then the publishers are sneaky. We were going through inventory and I found a copy of Stalking Jack the Ripper, and it was in Adventure where we put like James Patterson and everything, and it was just like a mass market paperback with the same cover and everything on it, no markings that it was YA at all, like whatsoever. And it's like, oh well, it was reprinted. I found out later that it had been reprinted to try and catch a more adult audience. And I'm like, sure, because they really want to read about some 16-year-old person that wants to be a mortician.
I would. I would definitely read about it. That's one of those things I've always wanted to research and write about, but it's so hard to find anybody who will actually talk to you about it. Right. So that's why I watch like
watch all the documentaries
Jody on YouTube there, the mortician. She does the best stories. But yeah.
You should read from Jennifer Armentrout. Don't Turn Around. It's YA. It's like a thriller mystery thing. That was amazing. Like,
so I'm reading that, and I'm reading The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Is that how you say
read that one? I think that's right.
Okay. Reading those two, and because I've realized recently that reading is actually one of those things that I need to do. I hadn't done it in a while, and I was really just like not feeling like working at all either. And I need to fill up the well, I guess, for lack of a better term. I need to read in order to feel like creating my own. So now I'm like, oh yay, I can buy all the books.
It's like, give me all the books.
It's necessary, and they're tax deductions.
Well, if you need anything that you want something like a really light romance that you just don't eat anything during it, it was the one that I read right before I read this one, and it's called Roommate. And that was,
it's so funny. I don't do a lot of light books anymore.
And it's really good. And it's like I had to stop eating during the time I was reading it because I kept choking on my food. And it was really bad. I even put in my review, it's like, do not eat or drink anything while you're reading this because you will die.
Okay. I might give that a go then. See if I do.
I don't read a lot of adult books.
No.
I am full on YA unless it's Sherilyn Kenyon.
Oh my God. So I know her, right? You know that. No, we both used to write for Avon at the same time. I remember when she became,
I got to meet her once.
Yeah, I remember her and I standing in a hotel hallway, both of us just so brand new.
Oh, I love her so much. Her Dark Hunter series. I thought she was going to kill me. She was down here in Florida for RWA a couple years ago. And I sat there. I think we were there for like 9 hours because I was waiting for everybody else to get all their stuff signed. Because you have like people that are coming in like with like maybe 4 or 5 books. And I've got like everything from the Dark Hunter series for to sign.
Boy, she loved you.
I'm gonna kill this lady.
Right? Does she have the swan hat?
No, I don't think so. They were throwing out like aliens.
Oh, okay.
Like squishy aliens, and I love her clothes. She had like he had skulls all over it, and it has like the poodle skirt type thing like underneath of it.
Yeah.
It's like that's who I want to be when I grow up. And I don't even like dresses.
No, she's something else. Yeah. Yeah, I've known her probably for, well, I mean, I haven't known her well now for quite some time, but yeah, we probably met 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Close to it. Actually, 2001 is when I met her. Yeah, in New Orleans. My first RWA.
Oh.
That's when I met Julia Quinn, and like I still have some good friends in Romance Landia.
It's like now I'm like fangirling through you for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is so cool. I love that series.
Yeah, some good stuff.
Seriously.
I mean, she really kind of, brought the mythology to it, and that was really cool.
Yeah, I guess I'm one of the few fans, but I like her stuff. But then I also love the Shadowhunter series.
Okay.
They had like a big thing between the two of them. I
have a friend that used to write for that television show.
Oh, crazy! What?
I have a friend that used to write for that television.
That thing was a hot mess.
It wasn't her fault.
No. It was a hot mess, though. Like, seriously, no. Yeah. It will be the television show that we don't speak of anymore. But so have you been reading of anything? Have you been reading anything else, or hoping to read something that's coming out? Do you have anticipated
Victoria Schwab, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is getting a lot of play.
Oh, so pretty. I love that cover.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I want to read that. I've been reading an arc of Amelia Unabridged.
I can picture
what it is. It's a sweet little book about healing and loss. Yeah, no, I don't know. Like, there's the new Naomi Novik. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, I love her.
The Education. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I read Uprooted like forever ago.
Oh my God, that was so good.
Oh my God, you could not find a copy of that in hardback.
No, I just
anywhere.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like,
I found one at the used bookstore though. I was like, mine, pry it from one of my cold dead fingers.
I mean, one of the nice things about being in the industry is sometimes if there is something you want to read, chances are you can find somebody who'll send you a copy.
Right.
Pardon me, but no, I don't. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've really been excited about, and I don't. I'll think of something 5 minutes after we're done. But, I don't think so. Like, the last little while, I've just been really working on recapturing my love for writing, and so that's where the focus has been. Is just trying to jump back into that. So, and giving myself permission to just create whatever I want.
Do it. Do all of it.
I will.
I really do hope that because I really love all of your books, of course, and these darker themed books are just so powerful and just, I mean, exactly. I mean, because, speaking for somebody that, has dealt with, some kind of, sexual assault and stuff, I mean, it touched my heart. And I mean, and it's just, it gives you permission to feel what you feel because of what happened to you and to be okay.
Yeah.
That you're not broken, you might be chipped, but I got I would really love to see a book from you about somebody that had attempted suicide, because there was something that happened to me back in 2009, and I think you could do a really good job with it if it doesn't like completely make you want to just sit down in a puddle of tears. Which
well, I tried to tackle that a little bit with the Sisters of Blood and Spirit, right?
Oh, that's
Lark.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? I mean, hopefully I've got a few more years of this left in me. So I hope my plan is to die at the keyboard. So after having typed the end.
Yeah, don't forget that,
And, so
that.
You never know. It could be something. Yeah. There's actually a little bit of that in the dissociative identity book too. Okay. Which probably won't be out until 2023, but it's there.
That just means we have more things to look forward to.
All right, there you go.
I won't say no to that.
Okay.
I won't say no to that at all.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, and thank you. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what? This was only going to be a few minutes, like an hour and a half later.
I was like, oh my God, we've been on here
talking. I'm sorry, and here it is live. You can't even edit it.
Oh no, you're fine. It's like me and Lori. She wrote the Black Witch Chronicles. We'll get on and we'll just start yammering about everything, and then she'll like say a spoiler. So she's like. Every time I talk to you, I say things I'm not supposed to, and it's been like 3 hours.
Oh my God. Okay. I don't feel so bad now.
Well, I hate taking up you guys' time when it's like
I do have to go make dinner.
way over what it was supposed to be.
I didn't have any, but that's okay. It's just heating stuff up, so it's fine. This was worth it. I got to put a little bit of a face on, and That's
We have
always
to do
good.
this again. I have to like go find all of the other books that I have
God.
with you and like
Okay.
go through and read all of them. It's like, yo,
Go.
I'm done with this series. Let's go.
All right. I've written, I think I've written something like 50 books now, so.
I have one side of one tote because all my books are in totes are all your mass market paperbacks for your adult books that are like old.
Oh, like the Catherine Smith books?
I think
Or the
that might
Kate
be
Ross
it.
and
I
Kate
don't
Law?
remember. It's all like they look like romancy, adult
Okay.
romancy books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they look dead. I got it from the used bookstore, so I just like
Oh,
I because that was back when I had first realized that you were writing under different names, and
oh,
I was
okay.
like, oh hey, I wonder if they have these. So I go and look, and they had like one copy of everything, and I'm like, oh, mine.
Oh, right on.
Take them home. Well, thank you so much for coming
Okay.
on.
Okay.
And I am so sorry for taking up like an
Thank
hour and a half of your time.
Oh my god. Yeah, like, you're the first person I've talked to that, like, I talked to my husband and my cats today. Like, no, please. This was great. Thank you for wanting to have me on here. I appreciate it.
I feel you so much right there because all I talk to because I'm always home is my mother, my two kids, and my
Yeah.
husband, and that is it. I have no adult conversation unless I go to work.
No.
That's it. That's all I talk to.
I spend my day with cats. So, um, unless like a hapless telemarketer calls, not knowing what they're getting into, uh, that's all I've got.
Well, it's when the cats start talking back, you have to like kind of wonder
They do.
or worry.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah.
Well, have a great night.
Thank you. You too, and thanks again, and